The blood lantern was never meant to burn for a servant. It had hung above the execution gate for 300 years, black iron ribs wrapped around glass as dark as dried blood, waiting for the guilty to kneel beneath it and for royal hands to command its flame. Tonight, the council placed it in Mira Ashvale's arms, as if handing her a coffin. The entire court of Veyrholm had gathered to watch a traitor die, but Mira knew the crueler spectacle was not the man chained before the block. It was her, a palace servant in a faded brown dress, oath marked at the wrist, ordered to carry the cursed lantern through a hall of wolves, who had never once spoken her name unless they needed blame, blood, or obedience. The execution court was built beneath the open winter sky, surrounded by black stone arches and wolf banners, stiff with frost. Torches burned along the walls in a perfect circle of royal flame. Alpha lords stood in fur-lined cloaks. Noblewomen watched from high balconies with pearl-pale faces and hungry eyes. At the far end, on a raised obsidian platform, Alpha King Ronan Draven sat in a throne carved with snarling wolves, his black crown resting low over storm-gray eyes. He was feared across 7 packs, a king whose silence could end arguments faster than swords. Mira had cleaned blood from his council steps, carried wine to his war meetings, and stitched torn banners after his victories. He had passed her 100 times without seeing her. Tonight, he looked at her, only because the council had forced her into the center of his court. "Walk," Lord Careth commanded. Mira tightened both hands around the lantern handle. The iron was so cold it burned her palms. A servant was not supposed to carry it. Only royal executioners touched the blood lantern, because its flame judged blood before the blade fell. If the condemned was guilty, the lantern burned red. If innocent, it burned white. If the carrier was unworthy, it drank the warmth from their bones until they collapsed. That was why they had chosen her, not because she mattered, but because she did not. Mira stepped forward. The oath mark around her wrist tightened. It always did when a command came from someone above her station. The mark had been burned into her skin when she was 8, after her mother died owing service to the palace kitchens. It meant she could not refuse royal duty, could not leave the palace walls, could not speak against a noble house unless directly questioned by the crown. The court called it lawful service. Mira called it a leash that knew how to smile. A murmur passed through the nobles as she carried the lantern toward the condemned man. He was old, thin, and bruised, with silver hair falling over one eye. They called him a traitor because Lord Careth said he had tried to poison the king's winter wine. His hands were chained behind his back, but he did not look afraid. He watched Mira instead of the blade. When she reached him, his cracked mouth moved. "Little Ash," he whispered. Mira nearly dropped the lantern. No one had called her that since childhood. Her mother had used the name when Mira came in from the coal yard covered in soot, laughing before the palace took laughter from both of them. Lord Careth's voice snapped across the court. "Raise the lantern." Mira lifted it. The iron handle cut deeper into her palms. The court leaned forward. Even King Ronan's eyes sharpened. Nothing happened. No red flame, no white flame, no judgment. A smile spread across Lord Careth's mouth. As expected, the lantern rejects impure hands. Heat rushed to Mira's face. Around her, soft laughter began like knives being unsheathed. Servant girl, kitchen oath, useless blood. She heard the words without anyone needing to speak them loudly. Her shame was the point of the ritual now. The oath mark tightened until pain climbed her arm. "Again," Careth said. "Hold it higher." Mira obeyed because the mark gave her no choice. The condemned man looked at her with sudden urgency. "Do not fear the flame." Before she could understand, Careth struck him across the mouth. Silence. Blood ran down the old man's chin. Something in Mira's chest shifted. Not power, not courage, only anger, too tired to kneel. She had watched nobles spit on servants, guards drag kitchen girls into punishment rooms, councilmen rewrite truth while honest mouths stayed shut. She had survived by lowering her eyes. But the old man's blood on the stones felt like one small cruelty too many. Her hand tightened around the lantern. A drop of her blood slid from her cut palm onto the black glass. The entire execution court went dark. Every royal torch died at once. A scream rose from the balconies. Wolves snarled beneath human skin. The guards drew swords. Above them, the moon vanished behind a sheet of cloud, leaving only the blood lantern in Mira's hands. Then it lit. Not red, not white, gold. The flame burst upward inside the glass like a heart waking after centuries of burial. It spilled through the iron ribs, wrapped around Mira's bleeding fingers, and instead of burning her, it warmed her bones. The oath mark on her wrist cracked with a sound like breaking ice. Mira stared at it, unable to breathe. The condemned man began to laugh, not with madness, with relief. Lord Careth staggered back. Impossible! The lantern's golden fire spread across the execution court in thin, bright lines, touching every royal banner, every noble crest, every wolf carved into the black stone. One by one, the symbols dimmed as if the lantern had searched them and found them lacking. Then the flame turned toward the throne. Alpha King Ronan stood, for the first time since Mira had known him. The court saw shock on his face. The lantern pulsed once in her hands, and a woman's voice came from the fire, ancient and clear. Blood of the first Wolf Queen. The court froze. Mira's knees weakened. The golden flame rose higher, forming the shape of a crowned wolf behind her shadow. The voice spoke again. Not servant, not oathbound, not disposable. Lord Careth's face went white. The lantern turned its flame toward the king, and every wolf in the execution court lowered its head except Ronan's. Then the fire gave its final judgment. The throne has been feeding on stolen blood. For one breath, no one moved. The golden fire of the blood lantern burned in Mira's hands, brighter than every dead torch around the execution court, and its final words hung above the stones like a blade no one dared touch. The throne has been feeding on stolen blood. Mira did not understand what it meant. She only knew that every noble face had changed. The laughter was gone. The hunger was gone. Even the wolves beneath their skin had gone still, as if the flame had placed its hand on every throat in the court. Lord Careth recovered first. "Seize her," he ordered. The guards hesitated. "Seize her." 2 men stepped forward, but the lantern flared, and both stopped as if struck by invisible heat. The golden flame did not burn outward. It simply turned toward them, and their wolves whined beneath human skin. One guard dropped his sword. The other staggered back, clutching his chest. Mira looked down at the lantern, with terror tightening her ribs. It had cracked her oath mark, the black brand around her wrist. The mark that had ruled every command since childhood was split down the center. Through the fracture glowed the same gold as the flame. Lord Careth saw it. His fear turned sharp. "She has broken royal oath law," he shouted. "This is treason before the execution block." "I broke nothing," Mira said. Her voice sounded small in the huge court, but the lantern answered with a low pulse, as if agreeing. The condemned old man lifted his bruised face. No, she remembered. Careth struck him again, harder this time. The old man fell against his chains. Mira stepped toward him before she could stop herself. The movement shocked the court more than the flame. Oath-bound servants did not move without command. They did not step toward condemned traitors. They did not look council lords in the eye with blood on their hands and gold fire around their fingers. Careth turned on her. "One more step, girl, and I will have your tongue cut out before the block falls." Mira stopped, not because of his threat, because Alpha King Ronan had descended from the throne. The crowd parted for him instantly. He walked through the dead torchlight in black ceremonial armor, his fur cloak dragging over the stones, his storm-gray eyes fixed not on the lantern, but on Mira's broken oath mark. His face was controlled again, but not calm. Beneath the surface, something in him had gone dangerously alert. When he stopped before her, the golden flame leaned toward him. Ronan's jaw tightened. Mira felt the heat of his presence more than the lantern's fire. He was taller, up close, colder, built like a man who had never needed to ask twice for anything. She had feared him for years in the distant way. Servants feared storms, kings and closed doors. But now, standing before him with a cursed relic burning only for her, she saw something else beneath his power. Weariness, deep, hidden, and quickly buried. "What is your name?" he asked. The question struck harder than accusation. Mira swallowed. "Mira Ashvale." A ripple moved through the court. Servants were not asked names during executions. Ronan repeated it softly, almost testing the shape of it. "Mira Ashvale." The lantern burned brighter. Kareth's expression darkened. "Your Majesty, do not indulge this. The blood lantern is clearly corrupted. Its flame has been influenced by her blood." Ronan did not look at him. And why would a servant's blood influence a royal relic? Kareth's silence lasted too long. Mira noticed. So did Ronan. The old man in chains began to laugh again, though blood darkened his teeth. "Because the lantern remembers what men like him buried." Kareth grabbed the executioner's axe from the block and pressed its edge beneath the old man's chin. "Speak one more word and die without judgment." Ronan's voice cut through the court. "Remove the blade." Kareth froze. For the first time, Mira saw the council lord forced to obey. Slowly, he lowered the axe. The blood lantern pulsed again. Golden fire spilled onto the ground and formed a thin circle around the condemned man. The old man's chains began to smoke, not from heat, but from the truth burning through whatever spell held them. Mira stared at him. "Who are you?" The old man looked at her with grief so tender it frightened her. "Someone who failed your mother." Her heart stopped. "My mother died in the kitchens." "No," he said. "Your mother died hiding you from this court." Mira's fingers tightened around the lantern handle. The world seemed to tilt. She remembered her mother only in fragments. Soot, dark hair, warm hands. A song hummed too softly, the smell of ash and bread. She remembered fever, a closed door, palace women whispering. Then the oath mark burned onto her wrist before she had fully understood death. Kareth's face had gone pale with rage. "He lies." The lantern turned red for one instant. The court gasped. It had judged the lie. Ronan saw it, and his eyes sharpened. "Continue," the king said. Kareth snapped. "Your Majesty." Ronan turned his head. The council lord fell silent. The condemned man pulled himself upright, despite the chains. Her mother was Leora of the Ember Vale, last sworn guardian of the blood lantern. She carried the line of the first wolf queen. When the council learned her child might inherit the lantern's flame, they killed her and marked the girl as oath-bound before her blood could wake. Mira could not breathe. "No," she whispered. But the lantern warmed in her hands like a living heart. Ronan looked at Kareth. "Is this true?" Kareth did not answer. The old man's eyes shifted to the king. "Ask why your royal flame has weakened every winter. Ask why your wolf coughs blood beneath the full moon. Ask why the throne demands executions before every solstice." Ronan went utterly still. The court saw it. Mira saw it. The king had a secret wound. Kareth stepped backward. "Enough." The golden flame rose suddenly, shaping itself into a crowned wolf behind Mira. Its eyes burned white. Its jaws opened, and the same ancient woman's voice spoke from the lantern again. "False oath. False execution. False throne fire. The execution block split down the center. The old man's chains fell open, and from beneath the broken block, hidden in the stone, a black root pulsing with stolen blood began to crawl toward Ronan's feet. The black root moved like something alive beneath the execution stones. It crawled from the split block in slow, wet coils, pulsing with dark red light, each beat time to the royal torches that had died around the court. Nobles backed away in horror. Wolves growled beneath human throats. The old condemned man sagged against his broken chains, breathing hard, but his eyes remained fixed on the root with bitter recognition. Mira could not look away. The root was not wood. Not truly. It looked grown from dried blood, twisted oath marks, and hair-thin veins of black iron. Every inch of it carried names carved so small they seemed like cracks. As it reached toward Alpha King Ronan's boots, the blood lantern flared violently in Mira's hands. Ronan did not step back. That frightened her, more than if he had. "Your Majesty," Lord Careth said, voice tight with panic. "Do not let the relic frighten the court. This is old execution magic. Nothing more." The lantern flashed red again. Ali, the court saw it. A murmur surged through the arches. Careth's face hardened. "Break the lantern." Several guards moved. Mira clutched it tighter, but she knew she could not fight trained wolves. She had no blade, no rank, no practiced magic. Only a lantern that had chosen her without explaining why, and a truth that might kill her before she understood it. Ronan lifted one hand. The guards stopped. Careth turned on him. "You cannot trust her." "I do not," Ronan said. The words hit Mira before she could stop them from hurting. Foolish. Of course he did not trust her. Kings did not trust servant girls standing beside traitors with forbidden flame in their hands. But the lantern's warmth dimmed for one small breath, as if it too had felt the wound. Ronan's eyes flicked toward her, and something unreadable crossed his face. "But I trust the lantern's judgment more than your fear." Careth went still. The old man laughed softly. "Careful, boy. That is the first kingly thing you have said tonight." Ronan's gaze snapped to him. "You will speak with respect. I spoke with respect to your mother. I spoke with respect to the queen who should have stood where your council sits. Respect is not the same as obedience." The court inhaled. Mira felt the blood lantern pull toward the old man, not as warning, but as recognition. Ronan stepped closer to the black root. As its tip touched the edge of his shadow, pain cut across his face. It was gone almost instantly, buried under royal control, but Mira saw it. His right hand tightened at his side. Beneath the collar of his black armor, faint red veins lit across his throat. The old man's expression changed. "It has reached your blood already." Ronan's voice was low. "What is it?" Careth answered too quickly. "A remnant from condemned traitors. Burn it." "No," Mira said. Everyone looked at her. Her heart slammed against her ribs, but the lantern burned brighter, as if courage could be borrowed in heat. "It is tied to him," Careth sneered. "You know nothing of royal magic. I know what chains feel like when they are called mercy." Silence fell harder than a slap. Ronan looked at her fully then. Not through her, not past her, at her. Mira hated the sudden heat in her face, hated that being seen by him felt like danger, and relief tangled together. Careth's voice sharpened. "Your Majesty, she is using pity to confuse you." "No," Ronan said, still watching Mira. "She is using memory." The black root lunged. It wrapped around Ronan's ankle before anyone could move. The Alpha King dropped to one knee. The court erupted. Guards rushed forward. Wolves snarled. Careth shouted orders. But the root tightened, and the blood lantern blazed so fiercely that every soldier near Ronan staggered back. Mira heard something under the chaos, a low, wounded sound from Ronan's chest. Not quite human, not fully wolf. His wolf was in pain. Mira moved before thought could stop her. She ran to him. "Mira!" the old man shouted. Ronan lifted his head, eyes glowing dark red. "Stay back." Command rolled through his voice. Alpha power, the kind that should have forced her to obey. Her cracked oath mark burned. For the first time in her life, the command did not take. Mira knelt beside him and held the lantern near the root. The golden flame bent downward, touching the black coils. Names flared across them: servants, prisoners, vanished heirs, executed wolves, all fed into the same hidden thing beneath the throne's law. Mira's stomach turned. "This is not execution magic." The old man's voice came rough behind her. "It is throne fire, hunger. The council has been feeding stolen blood to keep the royal flame alive." Ronan's jaw clenched. "Whose blood?" The blood lantern answered before anyone else could. Oath-bound, nameless, unclaimed. The disposable. Mira stopped breathing. The disposable. Girls like her. Servants with no house to defend them. Prisoners declared traitors before their trials began. Children marked with oath brands and turned into property because property did not require justice. The lantern had not only chosen her, it had brought her to the mouth of the thing eating people like her. Kareth's mask cracked. This kingdom survived because sacrifices were made. Ronan looked at him with lethal calm. Sacrifices chosen by whom? By those strong enough to rule. The admission rang across the court. The lantern flared gold. Truth. Mira placed her cut palm against the black root. Pain tore through her. She saw flashes: her mother running through palace corridors with an infant in her arms, a hidden chamber filled with lantern light, Kareth younger and smiling as soldiers dragged women with oath marks into the dark, Ronan as a boy coughing blood, while council healers poured red flame into the throne. Then one vision struck deeper than all the rest, her mother kneeling before the blood lantern, whispering, "If they take me, burn only for my daughter." Mira gasped. The black root recoiled from her palm. Ronan caught her before she fell, one arm around her shoulders, his body still half bound by the root. The contact sent heat through the lantern and something sharper through Mira's chest. His wolf, wounded and furious, went suddenly still beneath her touch. The court saw him holding her. Kareth saw it too. His eyes turned cold with calculation. "Now you see," he shouted. "She has bound the king through forbidden flame." Ronan's grip tightened. But Mira pulled away before the accusation could become truth in the court's eyes. "I bound nothing," she said. The lantern rose between them. Its golden flame shaped itself into the face of a crowned woman with wolf eyes. The old man lowered his head. "First, Queen Oraleth." The court dropped to its knees in terror. The Flame Queen looked at Mira, not Ronan. "Daughter of my extinguished line," she said. "Will you carry judgment, or will you let them feed again?" Before Mira could answer, the black root split open. From beneath the execution court, hundreds of oath marks began to glow. The oath marks lit across the execution court, like wounds remembering fire. They burned on wrists beneath servant sleeves, on the throats of chained prisoners, beneath the collars of stable boys, kitchen girls, old cleaners, messenger children, and silent guards who had once belonged to conquered houses. One by one, hidden brands glowed gold through skin and cloth. The court gasped as its invisible foundation appeared in plain sight. Mira had always known there were many like her in the palace, but she had never seen the truth gathered so cruelly in one place. The kingdom was not held together only by crowns, bloodlines, and wolf banners. It was held together by people marked into obedience and taught to call survival gratitude. The blood lantern grew heavy in her hands, not with iron, with recognition. King Ronan rose slowly beside her, the black root still coiled around one leg, its veins pulsing weaker where Mira's blood had burned it. His face was pale beneath the harsh gold light, but his eyes had become colder than the winter sky above the court. He looked from the glowing oath marks to Lord Careth, then to the other council elders standing behind the execution platform. "How many?" Ronan asked. No one answered. The lantern's flame bent toward the council. "How many?" he repeated. Careth lifted his chin. "Enough to preserve the realm." A low growl rolled through Ronan's chest. The court's wolves shrank from it, but Mira did not. She heard the pain beneath the rage now. His wolf was not strong because the throne was pure. It had been kept alive by stolen warmth, stolen blood, stolen obedience. The same system that had chained her had fed him without his knowing. That truth did not make him innocent in her eyes, but it made him trapped in the same darkness from the other side. The old condemned man stepped forward, free of his chains but barely standing. "Your Majesty, if you let the council speak long enough, they will make murder sound like duty." Careth turned on him. "You were sentenced for treason." "I was sentenced because I hid the last lantern, bloodchild, from you." Mira looked at him. "Who are you?" His expression softened with grief. "Edren Vale. I served your mother before I failed her." Mira's throat tightened. She wanted to ask 100 questions. How her mother had died. Why she had been left in the kitchens. Why no one had come for her. But the black root under the stones twisted again, and every oath mark in the court flared brighter. The answers would have to wait, if they lived long enough to ask them. High above the court, the royal balcony doors opened. A woman in a white fur cloak stepped out, her silver blonde hair pinned beneath a crown of black pearls. Lady Selvara, the king's chosen lunar candidate, moved with quiet elegance, her face arranged in horror so perfect it looked practiced. She had the kind of beauty the court trusted, polished, noble, untouched by hunger. When her eyes found Mira holding the lantern beside Ronan, something sharp flickered beneath the surface. Jealousy, then calculation. "Your Majesty," Selvara called, voice clear and sorrowful. "Step away from the girl." Ronan did not look up. "This is council business." "No," Selvara said. "This is blood magic. Look at your court. She has awakened every oath. Brand at once. If the servants panic, if prisoners break loose, if the marked believe themselves chosen, there will be slaughter before dawn." A murmur of fear passed through the nobles. Mira understood the move. Selvara was not defending the council openly. She was defending order, making Mira look like a spark near dry straw. A servant girl with a lantern could be pitied. A servant girl who made other servants remember their chains could be feared. Careth seized it. "Lady Selvara speaks wisely. The girl may not intend chaos, but lantern, blood does not require intention. Her power is primitive, ancestral, and dangerous." Ronan finally looked up at Selvara. "And you knew of it?" Her face did not change, but the lantern flickered. "Not red. Not yet." It waited. Selvara descended the balcony stairs slowly, every eye following her. "I knew only that the blood lantern belonged to dead history. I knew your reign could not survive old flames waking in servant hands." "That is not an answer. It is the answer a future Luna must give." Mira felt something tighten in her chest at the words future Luna. She had no claim on Ronan, no right to feel anything. He was a king, and she was an oath-marked girl whose world had been overturned within a single hour. Yet the way Selvara said future Luna, as if standing beside Ronan were already ownership, made the lantern flame press warmer against Mira's palms. Ronan saw the flame shift. So did Selvara. Her eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. "Ask the lantern then," she said. "If it judges lies, ask it whether I have betrayed you." Careth went rigid. Edren whispered, "Careful." Ronan extended one hand toward the lantern. Mira hesitated. The last time the flame had touched his blood, the root had reacted. But his gaze held hers, not command now, but request edged with danger. Mira lifted the lantern between them. Ronan spoke. Has Lady Selvara betrayed the crown? The lantern burned steady gold. Selvara smiled faintly. Then Mira, acting on something deeper than thought, asked, Has she betrayed the oath? Bound? The flame turned red. The court went silent. Selvara's smile vanished. Mira's heart slammed against her ribs. She did not know how she had known to ask differently. She only knew the lantern did not care for crowns the way courts did. It cared for the blood beneath them. Ronan turned toward Selvara. Explain. Selvara's perfect sorrow hardened into something colder. I did what a queen must do before she becomes one. I secured the realm's weakest seams. The oath-bound are not seams, Mira said. Selvara looked at her, as if seeing an insect speaking from a king's plate. No, they are pressure points. Whoever commands them commands the palace. The lantern flared red again. Truth, but ugly. Ronan stepped forward. The black root tightened around his leg, and he staggered once before, forcing himself upright. Mira moved to help him. He lifted a hand, stopping her not because he rejected her, but because the court was watching for proof that he needed her too much. The restraint stung anyway. Selvara saw it and struck. You see? She called. He weakens near her. The blood lantern has found a soft wound and wrapped itself around his wolf. If she is truly lantern, blood, she can make kings kneel by pity alone. Mira went still. That was the cruelest accusation, because it touched the truth from the wrong side. Ronan was weakening. She could feel it. The black root was drawing from him, and the lantern was drawing toward her. Everyone could sense the connection, even if they misunderstood it. If she reached for him now, they would call it control. If he reached for her, they would call it corruption. Kareth raised his hand. The council guards lifted crossbows from the upper arches. All aimed at Mira. Ronan's wolf surged so violently that the black root split the stone beneath his feet. Lower them. Kareth's voice was calm. Your Majesty, we cannot risk the blood lantern leaving this court in her hands. Selvara's eyes stayed on Mira. Nor can we risk her waking every oath. Mark in Veyrholm. The oath bound around the courtyard began to tremble. Some looked at Mira with hope, others with fear. That was worse. She did not know how to lead them. She had barely learned how to stand. Edrin stepped in front of her, an old man, bruised, unarmed. Mira, he said without looking back, your mother gave the lantern one command before she died. It will not burn those you choose to shield. Mira's fingers tightened around the handle. I do not know how. You do, he said. You have done it all your life. You endured without becoming cruel. The crossbows fired. Ronan roared. Mira lifted the blood lantern. Gold fire burst from the glass in a circle around the execution court. The bolts struck the flame and froze in mid-air, their iron tips melting into sparks. The fire passed over every oath-marked servant and prisoner without burning them. It passed over Ronan, dimming the black root around his leg. It struck the council guards and threw them backward against the arches. The entire court fell silent. Mira stood at the center of the golden shield, shaking, the lantern blazing in her hands. Selvara stared at her with naked hatred now. Kareth looked afraid for the first time. Ronan looked at Mira, as if he had finally understood that she was not a weapon the lantern had chosen. She was the heir it had been waiting for. Then the execution block behind them cracked open fully, revealing a staircase descending beneath the court. From below came the sound of children crying. The crying beneath the execution court silenced every wolf above it. It came from the staircase under the split block, thin and distant, echoing through old stone like a memory that had been locked too long in the dark. Not one child. Several. Some sobbed openly. Some made small, frightened sounds, as if they had learned crying too loudly brought punishment. Mira stood with the blood lantern blazing in her hands, and for the first time since the flame had chosen her, true horror moved through the court without needing magic to reveal it. Ronan stared at the hidden stairway. "What is beneath my execution court?" No one answered. That was answer enough. The black root around his leg pulsed, weaker now but not gone. Gold flame still circled the oath-bound servants and prisoners, shielding them from the council guards. Crossbow bolts lay melted at the edge of the fire. Above the arches, soldiers who had fired on her looked stunned, as if only now realizing they had obeyed an order that would have killed a girl in front of the king. Kareth's face had turned grey. Silvara recovered first. "Your Majesty, hidden cells exist under many old courts. Prisoners' children are sometimes kept for leverage during trials. It is unpleasant, but not treason." The lantern flashed red so violently the iron ribs rang. "Lee." Ronan's eyes moved to Silvara, cold and lethal. "You speak very quickly for someone who claims ignorance." Her mouth tightened. "Because hesitation kills kingdoms." Mira looked toward the staircase. The crying reached into her like fingers. She remembered being 8 years old, held down while the oath mark burned into her wrist. She remembered asking where her mother was. No one had answered. She had cried until she learned that tears only made the room colder. She stepped toward the opening. Ronan caught her arm. The contact was brief, firm, and careful, but the lantern flared between them. The black root at his ankle recoiled from her light. His storm-gray eyes held warning. "It may be a trap." Mira looked at his hand on her sleeve, then at his face. "They are children, I know." "Then move your hand." Something in his expression shifted. Not anger, but the pain of a man realizing command would not work on her, and perhaps should not. He released her, but he came with her. Kareth shouted, "Your Majesty, you cannot descend into an unsealed chamber with the lantern blood girl." Ronan did not look back. "Watch me." The words struck the court like a challenge. Mira descended first, because the lantern pulled her downward, its flame bending toward the crying. The stair was narrow, carved beneath the execution block, its walls wet with old red light. Ronan followed one step behind, sword drawn. Edrin came after them, limping but determined. Behind, the court murmured like a nest of frightened snakes. At the bottom, the passage opened into a low chamber. Mira stopped. Children sat in iron circles on the floor. There were 12 of them, ranging from perhaps 4 winters to 13, each with an oath mark burned around one wrist. Some wore servant rags. Some wore scraps of noble cloth, torn and stained. One little boy had wolf-gold eyes and a bruise across his cheek. A girl with pale braids clutched a wooden wolf toy so tightly her knuckles had gone white. In the center of the chamber stood a stone basin filled with dark blood, and from it grew the same black root feeding upward into the execution court. Mira's stomach turned. The root had not been fed only by executions. It had been fed by children. Ronan made a sound behind her that was almost not human. The children recoiled from him at once. That hurt him. Mira felt it before she saw it. He was their king. Their terror of him was another crime committed in his name. She lowered the lantern. "I will not hurt you." The smallest girl stared at the gold flame. "Is it going to eat us?" Mira's throat closed. "No." The little girl looked at Ronan. "They said the king needed us." Ronan went very still. Mira turned to him and saw something break behind his eyes. Not weakness, but a violent inward collapse. His reign, his health, his wolf, his throne fire, all of it tied to this chamber. He had not ordered it. Mira believed that now, but the children did not know that. The kingdom did not care whether a king knew the cost of his crown if the cost was still paid. "Who brought you here?" Ronan asked, voice low. The children shrank back. Mira lifted a hand slightly toward him. "Not command. Reminder." He drew a controlled breath and lowered his sword. The older boy with wolf-gold eyes pointed toward the stairs. "The White Lady and the Council Lord. They said if we were good, our families would eat. Selvada. Kareth." Mira felt the lantern's flame sharpen. Edrin moved to the stone basin, his face carved with grief. "This is a cradle siphon." Ronan looked at him. "Explain." "It steals unfinished wolf flame. Children survive longer than adults because their spirits keep trying to grow back what is taken." Edrin's voice roughened. "Your council used them to feed the throne fire without leaving execution records." For the first time, Ronan looked as if he might be sick. Above them, Selvara's voice floated down the stairway. "A king who cannot bear the truth cannot rule it." Mira turned. Selvara stood at the top of the stairs with Kareth beside her and 2 guards behind them. Her white fur cloak glowed faintly red from the hidden root light. Ronan stepped forward. "You did this." Selvara's eyes glistened, but not with regret. "I preserved you." "I did not ask to be preserved with children's blood." No king asks for the ugly work. He simply enjoys surviving it. Her gaze flicked to Mira. "And now this servant girl makes you feel clean, because she looks at you as if you can still choose better." The words landed too close to the truth. Mira looked at Ronan. His jaw was locked, his face furious, but beneath it was shame. Dangerous shame. The kind that could make a man lash out or surrender to despair. Selvara knew him well enough to aim there. Kareth lifted a black key. "Step away from the basin, or the siphon opens fully." The children began crying harder. Ronan raised his sword. Mira raised the lantern. "No," Selvara said softly. "If she burns the root, the king's wolf burns with it." The chamber fell, still. Mira's breath stopped. Ronan looked at the black root, then at the children, then at Mira. In that terrible silence, the choice became clear. Destroy the siphon, and the children might be free, but Ronan's wolf, already tied to the stolen flame, might die. Spare him, and the children remained food for the throne. Kareth smiled. "Now the servant girl understands monarchy." Mira looked at the blood lantern. Its golden flame trembled as if waiting, not for command, but for the kind of choice that made a person who they were. Ronan stepped beside her. "Save them." She looked at him. His eyes held fear. Not of death, of asking her to do what might kill him. "Your wolf is not worth 12 children." Above them, Selvara's mask cracked. Ronan, he did not look at her. "Mira, burn it." The lantern flared. The root opened like a mouth beneath the basin, and every child's oath mark began to bleed. The first child screamed. Not loudly, not like a soldier under a blade. It was a small, stunned sound, the kind a child made when pain arrived before understanding. Blood welled from the oath mark around her wrist in a perfect red circle. Then the others began to bleed too. 12 little wrists opening under a spell, older and crueler than the court above them. Mira's grip tightened on the blood lantern until the iron bit her palms. Gold flame surged against the glass, but the black root beneath the basin opened wider, drinking the children's pain before the lantern could reach it. The chamber filled with the scent of blood and wet stone. Ronan stepped toward the basin, sword raised, but the root lashed out and struck him across the chest. He hit the wall hard enough to crack the stone. "Ronan." Mira turned toward him. He pushed himself upright, breath rough, black veins crawling up the side of his neck. "Do not look at me. Look at them." The words cut through her panic. The children were huddled inside their iron circles, trapped by oath law, bleeding into grooves carved in the floor. Every groove fed the basin, Every drop fed the root. Every pulse of the root pulled at Ronan's wolf. Selvara stood at the stair with tears shining in her eyes, beautiful and monstrous in the red light. "You think I enjoyed this?" she whispered. "You think I wanted children beneath the execution court? I did what had to be done because his wolf was dying before he reached 18. The throne fire rejected him. The packs would have torn him apart if they knew." "Then you should have told him," Mira said, "and watched him choose death out of pride." Selvara's voice sharpened. "You know nothing of ruling. You know pain, and you mistake it for wisdom." The lantern flashed red. Mira did not flinch. "No, I know what it means when powerful people call someone else's suffering necessary." Edren had dragged himself to the nearest iron circle. He pressed shaking hands against the metal, trying to break the spell, but the circle burned him. "Mira," he gasped. "The lantern cannot burn the root while the children remain bound to it. It must choose a living carrier, a carrier." His face twisted with grief. "Someone with lantern blood must take the siphon into herself long enough to sever it." Ronan went still. "No." Mira understood before he said more. If she carried the siphon, every thread feeding on the children would pass through her body. The lantern might burn the root. The children might live. Ronan's wolf might be freed from the stolen flame. Or she might become the next thing the throne devoured. Kareth smiled from the stairs. "There it is, the noble sacrifice. Very moving. Let us see if the servant girl's courage survives actual cost." Ronan's gaze turned lethal. "When I reach you, I will remember every word." "If you reach me," Kareth said. The root tightened around Ronan's chest and dragged him to one knee. Mira moved to him instinctively. He caught her wrist before she could touch the black veins. "No," he said. His voice was harsh, but his hand trembled. She looked into his face and saw the truth he hated showing. He was afraid, not of the council, not of death, of watching her choose pain because his kingdom had left no clean road. "I ordered you to burn it," he said. "You ordered me to save them." "Yes, then let me." His eyes darkened. "I will not build my life on your blood, too." The words struck the chamber silent. For a moment, even the children's crying seemed distant. Mira saw him then not as the distant Alpha King who had passed her in halls without seeing her, not as the terrifying ruler shaped by banners and wolves, but as a man trapped inside the knowledge that his survival had been purchased with people he never knew were paying. The lantern warmed between them. Mira's voice softened. "Then do not build on it. End it with me." Ronan stared at her. Something moved between them, fierce and unfinished. Not love, not yet. Something more dangerous, because it was made of choice before tenderness, trust before safety. The bond of two people standing over a horror, neither created, but both had to answer. He released her wrist. The act cost him. Mira stepped toward the basin. Selvara's face twisted. "Do not let her. If she breaks the siphon, your wolf may never recover fully." Ronan rose despite the root tearing at him. "Then let it limp. You would weaken the throne for her." "No." His eyes burned silver. "For them." The children stared at him through tears. For the first time, their fear shifted. Not gone, not healed, but changed by the sight of a king choosing their lives over his strength. Mira lifted the blood lantern over the basin. "Tell me what to do," she said. Edren's voice shook. "Place your marked wrist over the flame. Let it read the oath. Then speak what your mother could not." Mira looked at the cracked brand on her wrist. All her life it had meant obedience, service, silence. Now gold light pulsed through the split, like dawn through a prison door. She held her wrist above the lantern flame. Pain erupted. Not heat, memory. Her mother's arms around her, a hidden room of lanterns, Soldiers at the door. A woman's voice whispering, "Burn only for my daughter." Then a blade. A scream. A child marked before she could remember royal blood. Mira nearly collapsed, but Ronan's voice cut through the pain. Mira Ashvale. Her name held her steady. She drew one breath. "I carry no master's oath," she said. "I carry my mother's flame." The lantern roared. Gold fire shot up her arm and into the broken oath mark. The mark split completely. Light poured from the wound, not blood now, but molten gold. The black root screamed as every child's siphoned thread ripped away from their wrists and flew into Mira. She fell to her knees. The children's bleeding stopped. Ronan lunged toward her, but the root dragged him back. "Mira!" She could not answer. The siphon was inside her now, cold and starving, trying to hollow her out. It showed her every oath-bound life it had eaten, every execution called justice, every child told the king needed them. It tried to make her hate Ronan. It tried to make her hate the children. It tried to make her hate herself for being the kind of girl who would still choose pain after a lifetime of it. Mira pressed both hands around the lantern. "No more," she whispered. The golden flame turned white. For one terrifying heartbeat, it looked as if it would consume her. Then Ronan tore himself free of the root with a roar that shook the chamber. Black veins split across his skin, but he reached her anyway, wrapping one arm around her from behind and placing his bleeding hand over hers on the lantern. Selvara screamed, "You will burn with her!" Ronan's voice was rough against Mira's ear. "Then I burn clean." Together, their blood touched the blood lantern. Gold and silver fire exploded through the chamber. The black root ignited from within. The stone basin cracked. The iron circles around the children shattered into harmless dust. Above them, the execution court shook as every royal torch burst back to life, not red, not stolen, but clear white. When the light faded, Mira was still kneeling. Ronan still held her, and every oath mark in the chamber was gone. At the stairway, Selvara stared down in horror as the white flame climbed the walls behind her. Kareth stepped back. Too late. The blood lantern turned toward them, and for the first time, it judged the living without being asked. The blood lantern's white flame climbed the chamber walls like judgment, learning how to breathe. Selvara stood frozen at the stairway, her white fur cloak glowing at the edges where the fire touched it. Kareth tried to step behind her, but the flame curved around them both, sealing the passage without burning the stone. It did not roar. It did not crackle like ordinary fire. It hummed softly, almost tenderly, as if the lantern had no need to rage when truth was enough. Mira remained on her knees beside the shattered basin, Ronan's arm still around her, both of them breathing hard. The children huddled behind broken iron circles, staring at their bare wrists where the oath marks had vanished. Some touched the clean skin, as if expecting pain to return. One little girl began to sob, not from fear this time, but from the shock of being free. Ronan slowly released Mira, though his hand stayed close to her shoulder. "Can you stand?" he asked. Mira tried. Her legs shook. He offered his hand. For a moment, she only looked at it. A king's hand had always meant command, ownership, punishment dressed as duty. But Ronan did not take her wrist. He waited. Mira placed her hand in his. He helped her rise. At the stairway, the lantern flame tightened around Selvara and Kareth. The white fire reflected in Selvara's eyes, turning her beauty sharp and hollow. "This is madness," she said. "You are letting a servant relic judge the future Luna of Veyrholm." The lantern flashed red. "Lee." Mira felt the answer inside her before the court above could see it. The blood lantern was no servant relic. It had belonged to the first Wolf Queen, a sovereign flame created not to obey rulers, but to reveal when rulers fed on those beneath them. Ronan stepped toward Selvara. The black veins on his skin had faded, but he looked weaker now, stripped of stolen strength. Still, the power that remained in him felt cleaner, more dangerous because it was his own. "Did you know about the children?" he asked. Selvara lifted her chin. "I knew the throne fire required stabilizing. That was not my question." Her gaze flicked to the children. "Yes." A low sound moved through Ronan's chest. The lantern burned steady white. "Truth," Gareth spoke quickly. "Your Majesty." She acted under council direction. "The burden is mine." Selvara's head snapped toward him. "Coward." Gareth's mouth tightened. "Strategist." Mira saw the alliance between them cracking. That, more than confession, frightened the council lord. People like Gareth could survive accusation if everyone guilty remained loyal, but truth made each traitor protect only themselves. The white flame turned toward him. Ronan's voice dropped. "And you? Did you order Mira's mother killed?" Gareth went still. The chamber seemed to hold its breath. Mira felt the lantern handle grow hot beneath her fingers. Her mother's name had not yet been spoken, and still the flame leaned toward the answer, like a wolf catching scent. Gareth looked at Mira, then at Ronan. Mira Ashvale was not killed. She resisted lawful containment. The lantern flashed red so violently that the stone ceiling cracked. Mira's heart pounded. "Say her name again," Gareth sneered. "Do not command me." Mira stepped closer, the lantern bright in her hands. She was shaking. She did not care. "Say my mother's name and tell the truth." Ronan moved beside her, not ahead. The difference mattered. Gareth looked between them and finally understood that Ronan would not silence her to make the court comfortable. "Mira Ashvale carried royal flame," Gareth said. "She refused to surrender the child. She attacked council guards. She hid you beneath the old coal chamber," he continued, voice tightening. "She tried to send you out through the ash tunnels. She said the lantern would never burn for thieves." White. Mira's vision blurred. Gareth's face hardened. "So yes, I ordered her death." The lantern went white hot. Mira nearly dropped it. Behind her, Edron bowed his head. The children went silent. Even Selvara looked away, not from guilt, but from the danger of grief finally finding a target. Ronan's hand closed around his sword. Mira felt it, the sharp pull of violence. The king, wanting to end the man who had murdered her mother, fed his throne with children and called it survival. Part of her wanted him to do it. Part of her wanted Gareth's blood on the stones, wanted the court above to see that disposable girls could become the reason powerful men died. But the lantern warmed in her hands, not urging blood, waiting. Mira swallowed the scream building in her throat. "You will not die down here," she said. Gareth's eyes narrowed. "You will stand above, where every oath-bound servant can hear what you did." Ronan looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. Respect, fierce and unwillingly tender. He lowered his sword. Selvara laughed softly. How noble, how useful. Let him speak then. Let the court hear that its king survived because of stolen blood. Let the Pax hear that Ronan Draven's wolf was fed by servants and children. Do you think they will praise your mercy, Mira Ashvale? They will tear him apart and call you the flame that exposed weakness. Mira turned toward her. Selvara smiled, beautiful and cruel. That is the part you do not understand. Truth does not free people. It gives wolves a reason to bite. The lantern did not flash, because that was not entirely a lie. Ronan stepped forward. Enough. Selvara's gaze moved to him, and for the first time real pain entered her face. I was going to be your Luna. You were going to be my keeper. I would have kept you alive. At what cost? At whatever cost the crown required, she snapped. That is what love looks like when a kingdom is waiting to devour you. The words struck the chamber with strange force. Mira saw then that Selvara was not only jealous, she was afraid. Afraid of losing the future she had built. Afraid that a king cleansed of stolen power might no longer need the woman who knew how to manage his weakness. Her love, if it was love, had grown around control until it could not recognize itself without chains. Ronan's face hardened with grief. Then, it was never love. I could survive. The white flame touched Selvara's cloak. She screamed not from burning, but from exposure. Images burst across the wall behind her. Selvara ordering children moved beneath the court. Selvara bribing healers to hide Ronan's sickness. Selvara instructing guards to shoot Mira if the lantern woke. Selvara whispering to Kareth that a grateful king was easier to rule than a whole one. The truth climbed the stairs before any of them did. Above, the execution court erupted as the images appeared in the air over the block. Nobles cried out. Servants shouted. Wolves howled in confusion and rage. Kareth staggered back. If the court turns, there will be revolt. Mira lifted the blood lantern higher. No, there will be witness. The white flame opened the staircase. Ronan gestured to the guards above. Bring them. Kareth and Selvara were dragged up into the execution court before the nobles they had deceived and the oath-bound they had used. Mira followed with the children behind her, each one free of marks, each one stepping into open air, as if dawn itself might hurt. When the court saw them, all noise died. 12 children walked out from beneath the execution block. That was the reveal no council speech could soften. Ronan stood before his throne, not on it. I did not know. Kareth laughed. Ignorance is a poor crown. Yes, Ronan said, it is. The admission shocked the court more than denial would have. He looked at the oath-bound servants, the prisoners, the marked guards, all gathered behind the lantern's golden shield. My throne was fed by crimes committed in my name. I will not call ignorance innocence. I will call it failure. Mira's chest tightened. The lantern flame softened. Ronan turned to her before everyone. Mira Ashvale, daughter of Leora, bearer of the blood lantern, will speak judgment before I do. The court inhaled. A servant girl, asked to judge before the Alpha King. Mira looked at the crowd that had laughed when she lifted the lantern, then at the children, then at Kareth and Selvara, kneeling in chains. Her voice shook when she spoke, but it carried. All oath. Marks are to be broken. All hidden cells opened. All executions halted until the condemned are judged by flame and witness, not council hunger. Kareth snarled. You have no authority. The blood lantern blazed behind her in the shape of the first wolf queen. The ancient flame spoke through the court. She has mine. Every wolf in the execution court lowered its head. Even Ronan's. And as Mira stood beneath the golden fire, the black throne behind him cracked down the center. The crack in the black throne sounded louder than any scream. It split from the wolf-carved base to the crown-shaped back, a jagged line of white fire running through obsidian that had stood unbroken for generations. The court stared as if the throne itself had become a living witness. Ronan did not turn to save it. He kept his head lowered before the blood lantern's flame, before Mira, before the children who had walked out from beneath his execution court with clean wrists and hollow eyes. That was when the nobles truly began to fear her, not when the lantern lit, not when the oath marks vanished, not even when the first Wolf Queen's flame granted her authority. They feared her when the Alpha King bowed and did not look ashamed of it. Mira felt the weight of their fear settle on her shoulders. She was still in a servant dress, stained with ash and blood. Her hand still shook around the lantern handle. Her body still ached from carrying the siphon. Nothing in her felt queenly. Nothing in her felt ready. But every oath-bound servant behind her was watching as if the next words from her mouth might decide whether they were people or property. She could not afford to break. Silvara lifted her head from where 2 guards held her in chains. The white fire had stripped the polish from her face, leaving something raw and furious beneath. "Look at them," she said, voice carrying across the court. They lower their heads now, because the flame frightens them. By nightfall, they will remember she was scrubbing floors yesterday. They will remember their houses, their bloodlines, their armies. Do you think they will obey a kitchen girl once the lantern dims? The words struck exactly where Mira was weakest. A few noble lords glanced at one another. Ronan rose slowly. "Careful." Silvara smiled. "Still protecting her? Or protecting the illusion that she can repair what you could not?" Mira felt the lantern pulse once, not red, not white, but gold, waiting for her choice. She stepped forward. "I was scrubbing floors yesterday." The court fell quiet. "My hands have carried chamber, water, blood cloth, coal buckets, spoiled meat, dead flowers, and every shame this palace wanted removed before guests arrived. I know what powerful people leave behind when they believe no one important is watching." A servant woman began to cry silently near the lower arches. Mira looked at the nobles. "So, yes, remember what I was. Remember it clearly, because from this hour, every law written over an oath mark will be read by the hands that suffered under it." Kareth laughed bitterly. "You will drown the court in servant grievances." "No," Mira said. "We will drain the rot before it poisons another generation." Ronan turned toward his captain. "Open the lower cells, all of them. Bring every record from the execution vaults, the kitchen contracts, the debt ledgers, and the council archive." The captain hesitated. "Your Majesty, some ledgers are sealed by noble privilege." Ronan's eyes flashed. "Then noble privilege can bleed on the floor with the rest of the lies." The captain bowed and ran. The black throne cracked again. A shard fell from its arm, striking the platform with a sound like a judge's hammer. Edrin moved beside Mira, weak but standing. "The throne is rejecting the stolen flame. What happens if it breaks?" Mira asked. His face darkened. "The royal fire goes out. Every pack oath tied to Ronan's reign may fail." The court heard. Panic rippled instantly. A young alpha from the western rows stepped forward. "If the throne fire dies, border packs will challenge before moonrise." Another snarled. "The council is broken. The Luna candidate is chained. The king's wolf is weakened. This is exactly when enemies come." Ronan looked toward the cracked throne, and Mira saw the truth settle over him. Freeing the stolen blood had not solved the kingdom. It had removed the lie holding it upright. Now everything built on that lie was beginning to fall. Silvara's voice softened into poison. "You still need me." Ronan did not answer. Kareth seized the silence. "There is one way to stabilize the throne fire. The old rite of royal joining. A Luna of noble blood can anchor the king before the flame dies completely." The court turned toward Silvara. Mira understood too late. This had been their final door. If Ronan married Silvara now, the noble houses would accept the broken throne. The court would call the children a tragic excess, and the realm might avoid immediate war. If he refused, the throne fire could collapse, and every rival, Alpha, would smell weakness. Silvara looked at Mira, then at Ronan. "Choose the servant's justice, and your kingdom burns. Choose me, and we can still survive this." Ronan's face was unreadable, but Mira felt the pain in the air between them. He had already chosen the children over his wolf. Now, the court demanded he choose stability over truth. Mira looked at the blood lantern. The flame had dimmed from white to gold, its strength drained by the broken siphon and the freed marks. It might not be enough to replace a throne fire. "Your Majesty," one elder alpha said carefully, "a king may hate the chain and still need the anchor." Ronan's hand tightened around his sword. Mira turned away before he could look at her. She did not want to see the choice form on his face. She did not want hope to become another humiliation. Then one of the freed children stepped forward. It was the little girl who had asked if the lantern would eat her. She walked to Mira's side and lifted her bare wrist. "Can we give it back?" Mira knelt. "Give what back?" "The fire they took." The girl looked at the cracked throne. "It was ours, wasn't it?" The court went utterly still. One by one, the other children stepped forward. Then the oath-bound servants. Then the prisoners whose marks had broken. Dozens of people moved behind Mira, raising clean wrists toward the blood lantern. Edrin inhaled sharply. "Not stolen flame, given flame." Mira's heart pounded. "Would it hurt them?" "No," he whispered. "If freely given, it does not feed on them. It becomes oath by consent." Ronan stared at the gathering servants and children, as if the floor had vanished beneath him. The little girl looked at him. "If you promise not to put us under the dark again, I will give a little." Ronan went down on one knee before her. The court gasped. "I promise," he said, voice rough, "by my wolf, my blood, and whatever crown remains to me, no child will ever feed my throne again." The blood lantern blazed. Gold fire leapt from Mira's hands to every raised wrist, not cutting, not branding, only touching. Tiny sparks rose from the freed oathbound and flowed toward the cracked throne. The obsidian did not heal. Instead, it burned away. The old throne collapsed into ash, and from beneath it rose a circle of gold flame, shaped like no chair at all. A throne no one could sit on alone. Ronan looked at Mira across the fire. Selvada screamed. "No." The gold circle expanded beneath the court, and the first Wolf Queen's voice filled the dawn. "A stolen throne has fallen. A witnessed crown may rise." Then the flame turned toward Mira and Ronan together. The gold flame turned toward Mira and Ronan, like a living crown deciding whether either of them deserved to survive it. No one in the execution court spoke. The old obsidian throne was gone, collapsed into ash at Ronan's feet. In its place burned a circle of royal fire shaped like a dawn ring on the black stones, fed not by hidden children, not by executions, not by oath-bound blood stolen in secret, but by the smallest willing sparks of those who had once been used as fuel. Servants, prisoners, freed children, and marked guards stood behind Mira with clean wrists lifted, trembling from fear and hope. Ronan remained on one knee before the little girl. That image did more damage to the old order than any blade could have done. The Alpha King kneeling not to a noble bride, not to a council oath, not to an ancient throne, but to a child who had been hidden beneath his court and bled for his survival. Some nobles looked away as if the sight burned them. Others stared because they understood they were watching a new law take shape before anyone had written it. Selvara strained against her chains. "This is not kingship," she hissed. "This is surrender." Ronan rose slowly. "Then I have mistaken kingship for hunger too long." Kareth laughed, but there was fear in it now. "Fine words. But pack law is older than your guilt. A throne fire without a seated ruler is an invitation. By moonrise, every rival alpha will challenge. By winter, your borders will bleed. You think servant sparks will stop armies? No," Ronan said. But stolen blood did not stop corruption. The gold flame pulsed brighter, then stretched from the ring toward Mira's lantern. The handle grew warm in her hands, not painful, but demanding. She felt the first Wolf Queen's presence inside the fire, not as a voice now, but as a question. The witnessed crown could rise, but only if witness became oath. Not obedience forced by brands. Not loyalty purchased by fear. Something harder. A kingdom choosing to be seen by those it had trampled. Mira looked at Ronan. It wants a vow. He stepped closer. From me? From all of us? The court stirred uneasily. An old Alpha Lord near the western arch scoffed. I will not swear before kitchen girls. The lantern flashed red. The old lord stiffened. Mira turned to him. Then do not swear, but do not expect the new flame to protect a house that refuses witness. His jaw tightened, but no answer came. Another Alpha, younger, scarred across one cheek, stepped forward. What does witness demand? Mira hesitated. She was still learning the lantern's language, still carrying pain from the siphon, still barely standing after a night that had torn open her life. But the answer came from somewhere deeper than thought. No hidden executions. No oath. Marks on children. No servant bound by debt without end. No blood taken for throne fire without consent. No council judgment without flame and living witness. The words moved through the court, like stones dropped into deep water. Ronan added, and any crown I wear from this dawn forward answers to those laws first. Salvara's face twisted. You would let servants limit the Alpha King? Ronan looked at the freed children, then at Mira. I would let truth limit me before hunger does. The gold ring flared. A great howl rose from beyond the palace walls. Not one wolf, many. Rival packs had felt the throne break. Their challenge was already gathering in the cold morning air. Kareth smiled again. Too late. The outer gates boomed. Guards shouted from the battlements. Ronan turned toward the sound, and for the first time that morning, Mira saw the cost of his weakened wolf. He stood tall, but the stolen strength was gone. His power remained, yet it no longer rolled over the court like an unquestioned storm. If rival alphas entered now, they would smell it. They would test him. They would see the bloodless throne and the servant girl with the lantern and decide whether the realm had become prey. Mira stepped beside him. He looked down at her, tension sharpening his face. You should stand back. No. His mouth tightened. Mira, you told me the children mattered more than your wolf. I am telling you the truth matters more than my fear. A fierce emotion crossed his eyes, but he did not argue. The outer doors burst open. 3 rival alphas entered beneath banners of frost, iron, and black pine. Their warriors filled the archway behind them, wolves half-shifted, claws scraping stone. At their center stood Alpha Garon of the Thorn March, a brutal warlord with white scars across his shaved head and a bear fur cloak over his shoulders. His eyes swept over the ruined throne, the chained council, the freed children, the broken oath-marked servants, then landed on Mira. So it is true, Garon said. The Draven throne is dead, and a servant girl holds its flame. Ronan stepped forward. The throne is not dead. It is changed. Garon smiled. That is what weak kings call dying. A growl rippled through Ronan's guards, but Garon ignored them. His gaze remained on Mira. Does the lantern burn for you, girl? Mira lifted it. The gold flame rose high enough to paint her face in light. Garon's smile faded, but he did not bow. Then let it judge strength. If Draven cannot hold the realm, the flame may choose a better wolf. Kareth shouted from his chains. Challenge him! By old law, a broken throne may be claimed by combat. The court surged into panic. Ronan's hand went to his sword. Mira felt the lantern tremble. Not with fear, with warning. This was Kareth's last trap. If Ronan fought while weakened, he might die. If he refused, the packs would call him broken. If Mira used the lantern to defend him, they would call him ruled by servant magic. Garon drew his axe. Alpha King Ronan Draven, I challenge your broken flame. Ronan stepped into the gold ring. Mira grabbed his wrist. The court inhaled. He looked at her hand, then at her face. If I refuse, the packs fracture. If you fight alone, you prove the old law still owns you, Garin laughed. Then what does the servant suggest? Mira turned toward him, the blood lantern blazing in her hands. Not servant, she said. The flame behind her rose in the shape of the first wolf queen, witness bearer. The gold ring expanded, swallowing the challenge ground beneath all their feet, and the lantern chose not one champion, but every freed, oath-bound soul in the court. The gold ring spread across the execution court until every shadow stood inside it. For one breath, Alpha Garon's challenge lost its shape. The old law expected 2 wolves, 2 blades, 1 victory written in blood. It did not know what to do with servants, prisoners, children, kitchen girls, stable boys, old cleaners, and broken guards, standing together under royal flame with clean wrists raised toward the blood lantern. It did not know how to measure strength when the people once used as fuel became part of the fire. Garen's axe lowered half an inch. Gareth saw the hesitation and shouted from his chains, "Do not let her change the law. Kill Draven now, and the throne is yours." The lantern flashed red, not because Gareth lied about wanting Ronan dead, but because the law he invoked had already been corrupted. The old challenge flame beneath the court had not been made for conquest. It had been made for witness, to ask whether a ruler could stand before those his power affected and still be chosen. Mira understood it all at once. "The challenge is not yours alone," she said to Garin. "If you want the flame, stand before the people your rule would feed on." The rival Alpha bared his teeth. "I answer to wolves, not servants." The blood lantern blazed. Every oath-bound soul in the court took one step forward. The gold ring rose around Garon like a wall of living light, not trapping him by force, but showing him what he had refused to see. Faces, names, children, prisoners, women with scarred wrists, men who had carried noble houses on bent backs. The flame did not attack him. It judged the shape of his contempt. Garon swung his axe. Gold fire caught the blade and turned it black. His warriors roared, but before they could charge, Ronan stepped forward. Weakened or not, he was still the Alpha King. His wolf rose behind his eyes, no longer swollen with stolen strength, but clear, hard, and his own. "Any wolf who crosses that ring does not challenge me," Ronan said. "He challenges every life stolen to keep kings powerful." The words held, not because all believed them, because enough did. The young, scarred Alpha, who had earlier asked what witness demanded, knelt first. Then one of Garon's own warriors lowered his weapon, then another. The court shifted like snow beginning to break from a roof. Garon looked around and saw the thing brute force feared most. Not defeat, but refusal. Selvara, chained near the platform, whispered, "Cowards." Mira turned to her. "No, witnesses." The lantern flame moved toward Selvara one final time. It showed no new vision now. It did not need to. The children stood free. The hidden cells were open. Her beautiful lies had burned away. Selvara looked at Ronan, and for a moment, the cruelty in her face cracked into grief. "I would have kept you alive," she said. Ronan's voice was quiet. "You were willing to kill everything in me worth saving." That ended her more completely than anger. Gareth tried to rise, but Edron struck him across the face with the broken chain he had once worn. It was not a killing blow. It was not even a grand one. But the court saw an old condemned man stand over the council lord who had sentenced him, and the sound of that chain-hitting stone after Gareth fell became its own kind of judgment. Ronan looked to his captain. "Take Gareth and Selvara to the upper cells. No execution, no hidden blade. They will stand trial by witness and flame." The captain bowed. Garin still stood inside the ring, breathing hard, his ruined axe in hand. "And me?" Mira met his stare. Her body ached so badly she could barely stand, but the lantern held steady. "You came to take a broken throne," she said. "You found a broken law instead. Go back to your pack and decide which one you serve." Garin looked at Ronan, expecting the king to overrule her. Ronan did not. After a long, bitter silence, the rival Alpha dropped his axe. It struck the stones at Mira's feet. Not surrender. Acknowledgement. The gold ring softened. The rival warriors withdrew from the doors. The nobles remained silent, shaken and resentful, but no longer certain. That was enough for Dawn. Not peace, not loyalty. A beginning. The blood lantern dimmed in Mira's hands. For the first time, it felt light. Ronan turned to the oathbound gathered behind her. "From this day, no child in Veyrholm will bear an oath. Mark, no servant will be bound by inherited debt. No execution will be carried out by council command alone. The lower cells will be emptied, the ledgers opened, and every stolen name recorded before the flame." A murmur passed through the crowd. Fear, disbelief, fragile hope. Then the little girl from the chamber raised her clean wrist. "And the throne?" Ronan looked at the ash where the obsidian seat had stood. The old throne was gone. The golden ring remained. "I will not sit above what I failed to see," he said. "Until Veyrholm is remade, I stand before the flame like everyone else." Mira looked at him then. Truly looked. He was still dangerous, still dominant, still a king shaped by war and command. He had not become gentle in one night, and she would not trust him simply because he had chosen rightly when the whole court was watching. But he had chosen, again and again, when the cost had been his wolf, his throne, his pride, and the woman meant to be his Luna. He had chosen the children, the truth, and finally her right to speak before him. That mattered. Ronan stepped closer, stopping far enough away that she could refuse his nearness. Mira Ashvale. Her name in his voice no longer sounded like a question. It sounded like recognition. "You will not return to the kitchens," he said. She lifted her chin. "You do not decide where I belong." A faint, tired smile touched his mouth. It vanished quickly, but she saw it. "No, I do not." The lantern warmed between them. "Then what are you asking?" she said. His eyes held hers, storm gray and stripped of command. "Stand beside the flame until we learn what this kingdom becomes. Not as my servant, not as my subject, not because the lantern chose you for me, because Veyrholm needs the one person it tried hardest to make disposable." Mira's throat tightened. Behind her, the freed children watched. Edrin stood with tears in his eyes. The servants waited, not for romance, not for a crown, but for proof that the girl who had carried their pain would not be taken from them and turned into another symbol owned by power. Mira looked down at the blood lantern. Its flame was no longer white with judgment or red with lies. It burned gold, steady as a heart. "I will stand," she said, "but not quietly." Ronan bowed his head. Before her, before the court, before the lantern, I would expect nothing less. The first true sunlight slipped over the execution walls and touched the broken oath marks scattered like dead shadows across the stone. One by one, the freed servants stepped into the dawn. The children followed, blinking as if the sky were something they had forgotten could belong to them. Above the court, the wolf banners moved in the morning wind, no longer lit by stolen flame. Mira stood beside the blood lantern as the old order smoldered around her. She was not disposable. She was not oath-bound. She was Leora's daughter, bearer of the first Wolf Queen's flame, the girl who had carried the cursed lantern through a court that wanted her humiliated and made it reveal the truth instead. And beside her, the Alpha King stood without a throne, watching the kingdom listen to the girl it had once ordered to obey.